Certificate Product Manager for the CI tools here at Central Innovation, and this is a weekly webinar that we run to talk about the CI tools. If you've been here for the last couple of weeks, you may know that we've been looking at the CI Cabinets tool recently. We're going through a series of looking at all of the tools in ArchiCAD 29. Yeah, we've had 2 weeks on the Cabinets tool so far, and this week we'll be finishing up on Cabinets, looking at the remaining things that we haven't covered yet. So we're going to have a look at creating space fillers inside our cabinets. We're going to look at how we can change the setout of the actual structure of the cabinet. And we're also going to have a look at how you can change the preferences to deal with how you edit the cabinet and how you size it and that sort of thing as well. If you have any questions, as usual, just enter those in the chat panel wherever you're watching this, and I will see if I can help while we are live, and if not, we can follow up with a support ticket later on. Obviously, we're working in ArchiCAD 29 today because we want to get these all recorded as videos for ArchiCAD 29, but most of what we're looking at today also will be available in 28 and 27 as well. So as long as you're using a recentish version, you should be able to do everything we're going to look at today. If you think of any topics that you would like to see covered in the webinar that we don't get time to look at today, or if you have suggestions for future topics you'd like to see in the webinar, you can email those through to nz.support@centralinnovation.com. That will make its way through to our support team, and they can either help you with your query or they can send it on to me and I will try to help you with your query. My apologies, I'm having some trouble with the stream at the moment. Just bear with me for 1 minute. Okay, I think it might be working now. Just going to quickly check to make sure that that is coming through okay. Looks like it is. Okay, sorry about that. I appear to have lost the ability to pause the screen share without crashing the streaming software, so I'll cover off questions at the end of this session. So if you have any of those, just enter those in the chat and I'll see them as we're finishing up. All right, so getting into the cabinets tool, we won't be covering the basics again because we've looked at that in the last 2 weeks. We're just going to jump straight into the space filler section of the cabinets tool, which is the last part left. I have a cabinet that I've constructed here, which has got quite a lot of different things going on in it. This is a single cabinet piece that I've dropped a sink into the top of, and I've put a bench top on top of as well. We'll have a look at the end at bench tops if we have time, but otherwise the rest of it is a cabinet. So we have our dishwasher, we've got some bins with a drawer on top, we have some double doors below the sink, we have a drawer stack here with a single drawer at the top of it, and then we have a single drawer at the end here with a microwave above that in the space there, and those are all part of the single cabinet unit. Now the way that I have placed the microwave in here is that it is actually a space filler, which is the thing we're going to be looking at today. And so there's quite a few things that you can use these space fillers for. That's why they're called space fillers. They're just sort of generically termed that because they are things to put inside any space. So the way that the space filler interface works is very similar to the others. So we've got our modules, which is where we set the type and the fronts, handles, and type fronts and handles rather, and the dimensions. The shelves and dividers where we set up the shelves and the dividers, and then spaces where we set up the spaces. And you can see again, we get that sort of preview of all of the parts of the cabinet here, and we can select the one that we want to make changes on and then modify what we want to do with it. So I'm just going to open up one of these other modules here so that we can do something in it that you can actually see. So I'm going to swap out this one on the bottom left here. That is currently a bin, and I'm going to make that let's just make it open shelf so that we can easily see what we're going to be doing there today. So if I hit OK there, so we have an open shelf at the bottom there with nothing in it. And now we can go to the Space tab and put some things inside this. So I'll select that module here. You'll see a little preview of it above here, although there's nothing in it, obviously, so we don't see much. And the type is currently set to none. Now, your modules will default to having none set as their space filler. They don't have anything inside them by default, but we're going to add one of those now. So we just have one control here, which is that we can control the type. So we're choosing what we want to put into that space. So if I click on the drop down here, you can see a list of all the available types. We've got books set 1. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Bowl stack, microwave, mug, plate stack, large and small, spice jars, rectangular and round, and storage jars, rectangular and round. Wine glass, wine rack, and then I have 2 custom ones that I created for this cabinet called dishwasher and microwave 1, which are the dishwasher and the microwave units there. We'll look at creating some of those later on. But for now, if I select one of these, book set 1, you can see it just places it without any further settings. Those are controlled in the type controls like we have done before. So I can select book set 1. If I'm happy with the settings that I already have in that, I just hit OK, and it will populate the space available with a randomly generated selection of books that look relatively sensible. The sizes are different and the colors and that sort of thing, so that it looks like an actual collection of books that you might have instead of being overly uniform. And then we can go through and change those out for anything else as well. So if I jump back in here, I can swap that out to actually be a large plate stack, for instance. Hit OK, and then it will do that. It will place the plates in there, and the same for any of these as well. So we could do storage jars. That will fill it up with there. And again, you can see it's randomizing the contents of each of those and the levels of fullness and that sort of thing, just to give it a little bit of and not looking at too uncanny valley with what you've got going on in there. And then most of the other ones follow roughly the same rules. So they just add in a bunch of the thing that you choose. So we could do bowl stacks, and you'll see those placed in the preview there. But the real settings for each of these is obviously in the settings for the actual type. So if I go back to, let's have a look at the book set first. So selecting book set, we hit this button next to the type, the same as we have done for the modules and for the fronts and handles before, and this will take us into the detailed settings for the types, and now we can choose the one that we want to set. So looking at book set 1, you can see we have this set up to use the type books, and there's a variety of types available here. And then we can choose how we want it to work. So the surfaces are controlled by basic texture mapping, so it's just using the default ArchiCAD surfaces, and it will just apply whatever is on those. And you can see in this one, we've got it default into the standard templates paint colors, so it's just applying a solid color to those. If you did want to go to the extent of actually mapping some book dust jackets as surfaces in your ArchiCAD project and then projecting them onto the books in your stack, you can in fact do that if you want to go that far. So just choose to map texture as image, Obviously, these don't have a texture, so it doesn't do anything, but if you did have that going on, choosing this setting here will apply them in the way that you would expect. So rather than just splattering them across the surface like they do normally for a texture, it will apply them rectangularly based on I think the bottom left corner and then across like that. So as long as you have set up surfaces that are rectangularly shaped in the proportions that you need in your surfaces, this will apply them that way. But for most cases, all you'll want is the basic texture mapping option. Then we can go through and assign the surfaces that we want to use, and these will just be randomly applied, as you can see here. These are a different set of books than last time we selected this because it's randomized each time we place one. They're not going to change when they're actually placed, but if we reselect this multiple times, it'll randomize it each time. Then we can also choose the color on the pages. That you can see there. And then we've got the dimensions over on the right here. So we have the height and width of the books. So the A is our height, B is our width, and C is the thickness. And you can see that each one has two values. That's just the maximum and the minimum because it is going to randomize in between those two. If you don't want it to randomize, you could set these both to be the same number on all of them, and it will just make everything the same size. Then we've also got settings for the minimum and maximum gap. Minimum is 0, so they'll be right next to each other, and 5 is our max at the moment. And then the minimum setback from the front. So this is sort of how far pushed into the shelf they've been. Most of these are self-explanatory. You can figure that out as you go. And then the probability that it forms part of a set. So you can see in a couple of cases here we have two identical books next to each other, or identically sized book rather, next to each other. That is called a set by the tool. And this is just the probability that any given book will be part of a set. So we've got 40% probability at the moment, 0.4. And so you can see we have in our setup here that two of the, what looks like about 10-ish books there have made part of a set. So that's what that is doing there. So that is the book type. Moving on to the stack of bowls, we have the dimensions for the bowls that we're using there, so you can set those to whatever you need to be. Those are not randomized, these are all uniform bowls, but we can choose how many bowls there should be there and what the surfaces are. Microwave is a pre-built, very basic microwave object here. I'm not actually using that one in this project. I got a microwave object that has a bit more detail, and I saved that as a custom space filler, which we'll look at shortly, but this lets you control the dimensions and the surfaces there. The mugs, same as pretty much everything else. I'm not going to go through all of the detail of these, but you have the dimensions for them and the surfaces there. We've got our two types of plate stacks, the large and the small. They're exactly the same element essentially. It's just that one is preset to be smaller than the other one. The spice racks are the same. Some are rectangular, some are round, but otherwise they're the same. You can choose the colors of what you want the contents to be and that sort of thing. Storage jars are much the same. They're just larger. The wine glass lets you control the shape of the wine glass and also the surface to be used for the glass itself. And the wine rack, it does exactly what it sounds like. It's just a wine rack, which will randomly fill itself with bottles. You can see here, there's a probability that any given cell in the rack will be, there's a 30% probability that any given cell will have a bottle in it. You can set that to as high as you want. So if we go 1, it should fill the whole thing. And if we go 0, it'll be empty. So you can do whatever you think would be sensible for that. And then the part of a set works the same way as it does for the books as well. And we can define the surfaces we want them to use here also. So those are all of the available types in here. So you can go through and modify these to be what you need. If you have multiple variations, maybe you want to have plate stack medium as well, just create a copy of this one. It's going to make plate stack large copy, so we can change the name to medium here. Leave those settings the same, but then we can say that this one should be, I don't know, 180 large instead. and that we want to have 5 of those, and that for some reason these ones should have a nice blue color to them. So now we have an additional space option available. So you can do that like the same as you could with the fronts and the handles and that sort of thing. And you can also make your own custom types as well. So if I look at the preset here called dishwasher, this is the one that I'm using over on the left here. You can see we don't have a detailed dimensions here because this has been saved from an object. So I found a dishwasher object that I liked and I saved it as a custom space filler. So you can see here that the type is set to a custom space filler, and then we choose which custom space filler we want. You can see I've got a couple of these floating in here, so we can swap between those, and then we can define the dimensions of that. The preview just is to give you an idea of what A, B, and C are doing, and we can control the surface if we need to override that as well. So we can do that with custom space fillers, and then the microwave one is doing the same as well. So custom space filler again, and it's using one of my pre-saved microwave models instead. So we can't set all of these materials here. You'll need to set those in advance if you want to have them be to what you want them to be. So before you save those as a custom space filler, you will set them in the object tool. So let's have a look at creating one of those. So I'll jump out of here. And what we can do is we can make a new type of space filler. So let's say that we want to, what do we want to get? For no apparent reason, let's see if we can find a kettle to put inside of one. Okay, here we go. Tea kettle. So this is just a standard object in the ArchiCAD library. Let's set it to be gold. There we go. So we place that object down, select the object, make sure it's set to whatever settings you want it to have, and then go to the File menu, Libraries and Objects, Save Selection As, and if we come into here, you'll be able to see that these are in alphabetical order, but we've got cabinet door, which allows us to set cabinet doors, obviously. Muntins allows us to set muntins. Oven does ovens. And then we've got cabinet space filler, which is what we want in this case. So we choose cabinet space filler. We give that one a name, so I'll just call it kettle gold, let's say. We'll save it in the embedded library so it's nice and easy to find, and just hit save. It tells us that it's done the job. And now if we jump back into this, whoops, there's my benchtop. Jump back into here, we can go into the spaces settings. We'll make a new space filler. Call it kettle gold. We'll leave it as custom space filler, and in here we will choose the new space filler that we saved out, kettle gold. Select that. You can see it's warped to the dimensions because of what we have it set to here. So A and B should both be the same for this one because it's circular, so I assume that's right. And then C is the height. Let's make that about 350 and see how that looks. 300-ish. So we can save that using those settings we have there, and then come up to this setting here, and we'll specify that this module has our new space filler kettle gold. Hit OK, and it'll place that space filler inside it. So you can use this for basically anything that you want to put inside your cabinet, and it just means that you can easily populate the cabinet with these instead of having to place a 3D object down here and then get it to the right elevation and move it back and forth. And then if you move the cabinet, you have to move the object that's inside it and all of that sort of business. This just makes it much easier to do that. So I've done the same with the microwave over here as well. It's just a custom space filler object also that has been placed there. So that is working with the space filler elements. The other thing that I wanted to look at as well is modifying the settings for how the object will resize itself and that sort of thing. So when we select the cabinet tool, using the default settings, let's reset that. If I place one of these down, it's going to place a cabinet which is 600 wide, and if I grab hold of one of the edges and stretch it out, it will add extra modules at the size that I have it default into, which is 600, so it adds 2 more 600 wide units, and then the final unit is just whatever is left available. So we get 3 units and then one much smaller unit there. Now, if this isn't how you want it to work, it depends entirely on what you're trying to do and how you like it to work. There are different ways that we can make this work. So if I undo that and go back to our default settings, undo the stretch there, select my cabinet settings, and go to the grids and editing option here, you'll see we have a couple of controls here as to how that works. So over on the top right, we've got cabinet width adjustment. I'm just going to ignore the top setting at the moment because we'll look at that in a bit. But the setting below that is to insert unit partitions. So that means that when we stretch or when we make adjustments to the width, it will insert additional partitions to the unit as it does that. But we do have other options. So we can choose to insert module partitions instead. So instead of making complete unit partitions, it'll just make new modules, or it can do no partitions at all. So if I choose that option and then come back here and then resize this cabinet, it just makes the single module that I had much bigger. So it's never going to break that up into extra ones until you go and do that manually in the modules settings for the cabinet. So we can choose insert no partitions, and when we do that, we lose the spacing options. The other option is that we could leave it at, I'll cancel my resize first. We can leave it at the default setting, which is insert unit partitions, and we can change the default settings as well. So we could say that actually we want them to be 800 wide instead, and that the minimum size available should be 400. Hit OK on that. That won't make any changes to this, but now if I stretch it out, you will see that it adds a unit of 800 wide next to the existing 600 one. That was just the default setting, so it's just added this to it. And then the last one, because it didn't have room to fit in a 400 unit, it has just made an 800 plus whatever is left out of that. So 1134. If I had stretched it just a little bit further, we would have hit 400 and then it would have drawn, but because we told the minimum to be 400, it won't allow us to do that with what I've done there. So if that's how you want that to work, that's also an option. And then having the last bit there as well is where we say measure partitions. We can choose from the left or from the right, which is pretty self-explanatory, or proportionally. And essentially what that will do is it'll make the modules in our cabinet no longer have fixed settings for the widths. So if I hit OK on this and then stretch it out again, we will get a cabinet the size that we stretched it to. But now if I go into my module settings and split this up into, split into 3, so we get 3 units here. You can see that the widths are set here, and I can't modify them because they're being set proportionally. So everything is 544 millimeters wide, and we can't change that. If I go into, let's say, the middle one here, we can change this to measure from left, and it turns that back off again. So we're back to the normal method of working. But if we go into proportional mode, it goes back to the way that it was before. And now that everything's set to 544 like this, we can go through and we can change the width of the cabinet to, say, 2,000 meters. And 2,000 millimeters, and when we do that, everything will resize proportionally to each other. So now everything is 667 wide instead of whatever it was before. I can't remember. So if this is the way that you prefer to work, where it just sort of does the evening out for you and will never modify the width of the cabinet by itself, only when you tell it to, then that's a good way of doing that, is using the proportional option from the grids and editing control here. And we can do a similar thing with the height adjustment as well. So we can measure from the base or top or proportionally, in which case it will lock off the height values and just make everything fit in with what we want. And we can also choose which part of the cabinet we want to lock when we're manipulating it as well. So that is how you can control how that sort of setup works when you drag and that sort of thing. All right, those are the main things I wanted to cover off today. I'm just going to briefly pause the screen share and see if we've got any questions. So if you do have any questions, just enter those in the chat panel wherever you're watching this. Okay, it looks like we've got a question. Do we have CI tools for ArchiCAD 29? Yes, the CI tools are available for ArchiCAD 29. That's the version that I'm using at the moment. They all were released on the same day that ArchiCAD 29 was. So if you're using ArchiCAD 29, you can grab the CI tools for those and start them either as a trial or buy a subscription for those. And just head to myci.centralinnovation.com/free trial or /buy if you want to purchase those or to start a free trial for them. And those will work in ArchiCAD 29. If you already have the CI tools installed and you've got ArchiCAD 29 installed, make sure that your CI tools installer is updated to the latest version so that it can handle 29. On Windows, it'll update automatically, but if you're on a Mac, you'll need to head to the MyCI website and download the latest version of the CI Tools installer to get that on your machine. When you run that, it will just show up ArchiCAD 29 as the available version to install to, and then you can just install whatever tools you want to use. All right. It looks like that's all of the questions that we have this week. This will be the last session for the year. Happy holidays to everyone watching today. If you have any suggestions for things you'd like to see covered once we get back next year, please do let us know by emailing nz.support@centralinnovation.com. Or if you have any comments about what you'd like us to do with this series of webinars or anything like that, any of that would be appreciated. But otherwise, thanks for coming, some of you all throughout this year, and I hope to catch you next time next year. Thanks.